list. I am not your regular host. I am Bradford William Davis. I am a columnist for the New York Daily News. I'm co-piloting with Randy Wilkins of Views from 314 blog, but he's also a prominent filmmaker as well. And so he's multi-hyphen, I guess that's the word, right? And we're joined with two exciting young players in the game, Josiah Gray and Brendan Hardy. Good to have you all. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me. Absolutely.
Of course, and I guess a quick intro to the talents we got here. So Josiah and Brendan are both pitchers in organized baseball right now. Josiah is a prospect with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and Brendan a prospect with the New York Mets. We're excited to see them continue to shine, and hopefully this minor league baseball exists next year so that we can see them sooner than later. Or someone hides a camera in like an alternate site sometime soon. But yeah, and we wanted to just have a frank, honest, and hopefully refreshing conversation on baseball from perspectives we often don't hear unfiltered, from that of younger players of color, especially younger Black players, who haven't made it to the show just yet, who are still, on that minor league grind, and just kind of showing us, the path that they've taken, and the barriers that they've overcome, the barriers they've yet to face, and kind of like what could be done to make things more equitable, more a genuine meritocracy rather than the fake one we tell ourselves all the time. With that said, Randy, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so before we get started, Josiah and I have a small connection to each other just by location. He's from New Rochelle. I'm from the Bronx, so it's nice to see a ball player from my neck of the woods. So I'm very proud of that. Josiah, I've been able to follow your career a little bit when you were drafted by the Reds and then traded to the Dodgers. So Brendan, I'm a Yankees fan, just so we can get that out of the way.
It's all right, man. It's all right.
Yeah, but I'll be rooting for you too. So, of course, with everything that's going on, yeah, exactly. So, with everything going on with the pandemic, obviously the minor league season was canceled. Josiah, you're at the alternate site. You're on the 60-man roster for the Dodgers. Brendan, I guess you're working out on your own, or where are you right now?
Right now I'm in Gulfport, Mississippi, which is where I'm from. And I'm just working out, staying in shape, just getting ready for potentially having instructs or, just next spring training.
So there's a possibility that you could have instructs this year?
Slim possibility, slim chance on that one, but hopefully.
Josiah, how's it going at the alternate site? You guys are at USC, right? That's where you guys are.
Yeah.
On the alternate site.
Yeah, we're at USC, pretty much 7 days a week. It's going pretty well. It's more like a spring training sort of setup. So we get in early, we get our work done, whatever you have to do for the day. Say you have to throw against hitters, and then we leave. So we're out by, let's say, 1 to 2, and then we really have the rest of the day to ourselves. But obviously, they advise us doing anything against like certain protocols and whatnot. But yeah, it's going as well as can be. You just try to take advantage of the time out here and with the coaches and whatnot.
So with the alternate site, do they still have you in staggered groups, or all of you guys at the alternate site together? How's that working?
Yeah, so it's all of us together. So I think there's around 30 guys, give or take. So we all show up at one time. The hitters are doing their stuff. The pitchers are doing their stuff. But, they try to keep us spaced out as much as possible. So say the pitchers will stretch on this foul line. Hitters will be on the other foul line. So they're doing their best with it. And, everyone's staying healthy as of yet.
Do they got you posted up in a hotel right now?
Yeah. So we're all in downtown LA.
Okay.
Just kind of here and back. They provided like a bus service for us. that they shuttle the players from that don't have their cards out here. So it's running pretty well right now.
And Brendan, are you able to practice with other people when you're doing your workouts, or are these like more just like individually based? Like how have you been able to set up your workout so far?
It's basically just individually based, simply because, they send our workout plans out, but they're just making sure that everybody just stays safe as can be. And as long as we're just getting our work in and sticking to a throwing program, and not just basically taking this time off because we would be there. So we're just basically, well, I know I'm just doing the most that I can to stay on top of it, but that's about it.
Yeah, well, I'm happy that the both of you guys are healthy and safe and able to continue to work on your craft and get ready for Josiah, you for a potential call up, and for Brendan, the continuation of your development. So I'm happy that both of you guys are safe and healthy right now.
Yeah.
Yes,
True, for sure, man. So I guess a question just to give to help our viewers, know a little bit more about yourself and how you got to where you are right now. I mean, maybe could you guys share a bit of how you first encountered baseball? Like, what was that touch point, that led you to want to do this kind of work?
Yeah, I'll go first. As a kid, baseball was what I knew. So I think I started around age 6 with T-ball all the way up to professional baseball now. But from what I've heard about when I was a kid, I wouldn't want to put the baseball down, and I would always want to get extra work in, just ground balls in the backyard, throwing to my dad or with my brothers at the time. I have 2 older brothers. So just, baseball. And then obviously when I grew up, to play travel ball and whatnot, you're playing baseball pretty much every weekend. So from then, it's kind of been baseball is all I know and all I've known. And then I went to college for it and whatnot. But yeah, baseball is literally all I've known.
Yeah, and it's basically the same with me too, because my dad actually got up to AA with the Tigers. So since the moment I was born, just all I've known is baseball. And playing in T-ball started off at 4, and then just carrying on from there, going into travel ball, and just playing just more competition. It just always made me strive to be better. And I wish I had the same work ethic that I had now back then, because I would have gotten drafted a little bit higher. But it's still a blessing just to get drafted, even though it was in the later rounds, but I'm blessed with the opportunity. And it just basically, since I got to pro ball, it showed me more of what I was capable of, and I started holding myself more accountable. And basically, I've just gotten better every year, and I'm just ready to see where I can get with this game. So did either one of you play sports outside of baseball, or was it just totally baseball and that was all that your focus was?
Just baseball for me.
I played basketball up until 10th grade. And that was the first time I ever went down to Jupiter, Florida, played in the October WWBA. And then after that, I was like, yeah, I need to commit to baseball. Forget basketball. And I was like, yeah, man, I got some work to do. So that's whenever I fully committed to baseball.
Yeah, there's some dudes that go down to that Jupiter tournament every year. You always hear about that. So I'm sure that was eye-opening, and you could be like, oh, man, these dudes are serious, because there's scouts everywhere, college coaches.
Just saw just the difference in talent from guys who play other sports, where I was like, I was naturally athletic, but also it was, you got to get your baseball skill down. So then that's whenever I really was just like, you know what, I'm not playing varsity in basketball, so I could kind of get that up. I got to be ready for baseball.
Yeah, that was actually a question I had too. Was like, you just kind of did you realize at that tournament that it wasn't just like a a matter of skill, but also like a passion. Like I like this more than I like the basketball hoop dream.
Oh yeah, a lot. I mean, growing up playing both, you want to make it in both, but I didn't see myself really playing in the NBA because I only had one skill set, and that was to shoot. Like I couldn't dribble. It was, and I was like, yeah, I have a little bit less to work on baseball, but like it'll be more beneficial in the future. So
okay, you could have been the Jimmer Fredette of the modern game.
Yeah, I mean,
sad.
If I would have stuck with it, and then the craziest part about it is, whenever I quit basketball, I was 5'10", right? Mm-hmm. And this was my sophomore year. So from October to January, I remember I went to Alabama State for a showcase. I get to Alabama State, I'm 6'1", right?
Oh, wow.
I'm 6'1". I'm throwing 8 miles an hour harder. And then, like, I got a little bit of juice behind my swing, and I was loving it because I was like, you see, this is what quitting basketball did for me. And then I got my first offer, and I was like, yo, I'm lit. Like, I need to stay in baseball. So that's how that went.
That's funny. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up the fact that, well, the both of you bring up the fact that baseball was your main passion and ultimately your main focus, because I think one misnomer, well, a couple misnomers, is that currently there aren't any young Black people that enjoy the game of baseball or don't play the game of baseball, and that if they are a multi-sport athlete, baseball is always assumed to be like the second or third choice. Mm. And in both of your cases, that wasn't the situation at all. That wasn't the case. Like, both of you fell in love with the game early on. So can you just talk a little bit about that, about how, like, the general perception of young black men and women, or boys and girls, when we're speaking about younger ages, how there's this misnomer that baseball isn't something that we enjoy just like anybody else?
Yeah,
you got it.
All right, yeah. Honestly, just growing up, my dad, he grew up baseball, football, so multi-sport, and he grew up in a time when there were a lot of Black athletes in baseball. So when we grew up, me and my brothers, it was just like, we're gonna play baseball. It wasn't like, oh, there's no one to look up to that plays the game. It was just like what my dad did, so we kind of did it. And I think as you grow up, like in Little League and in travel ball, you start to see, like, wow, like there's a correlation between the kids on your Little League team to travel ball. You see it start to trickle off. You see Little League, travel ball, then you get to high school baseball, and it's like, the time you're in high school baseball, at least for me, there was a handful of us that were on my high school baseball team, but it was just like, if you go back to Little League times, you're like, wow, there was like a good pool of young Black athletes that like to play baseball, but then you just see, like, they're not there anymore by the time it's high school, when most athletic careers are over. So it's like, that's probably where that misconception comes from, is because you see it at the lower levels, but then when you get to high school, when you get to college, it's like they're not there anymore. And it's like, we're still here. It's just people don't care to highlight it as much. So it's sort of like, is it really there or is it not?
Yeah. And I can attest to that as well, because of the whole trickle down effect. Because a lot of guys that I had on my basketball team, because I'd be switching back and forth every day before basketball season started, and they were like, man, I'm about to come out there to baseball. Like, I used to play. Everybody would always say, I used to play back in the day.
Yes, exactly.
Like, and then it's like, why aren't you playing now? Because they just, I guess sometimes it's financial circumstances from the parent side, but because yes, baseball is more expensive, as we all know, to have top of the line gear. And it was just like, or they had this traumatizing story of how they got hit by a pitch whenever we were 9 years old. And then it was just like, yeah, nah, this isn't for me.
Not built for it. It's
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. And it's just like, but yeah, I mean, everybody has their reason, but I do think that if they highlighted our careers more to show kids that, to show actually young Black kids that we're actually making a rise now because we have a lot of Black minor leaguers who are on the verge of breaking the big leagues, like Josiah. And I actually know a kid from down here, DeMarcus Evans. You probably know him, Josiah.
Yeah, he pitched against us last year.
Yeah,
Double A. Yep.
Yeah, DeMarcus is from an hour north of me, and then we have Anthony Alford and Jonathan Davis who are in the big leagues and have been there for years. But like now, I think in Mississippi we're starting to highlight more Black baseball players because we're actually developing more now, and everybody's starting to like it rather than just playing football and basketball and then taking the typical way out. But I mean, right now I'm actually kind of happy with what's going on down here, but it needs to be a nationwide, it needs to be a national thing. It can't just be in one area.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and you mentioned that like what you want is you want more spotlight on amateur or minor league Black talent, I guess. Like who do you want putting that spotlight on? Like who should be paying more attention? Is it Major League Baseball or other institutions you have in mind?
I would say more of the not necessarily Major League Baseball, because we've actually, over this pandemic, we were highlighted a lot. So that was actually something that Black kids could look forward to and look up to. But I think on a day-to-day basis, it will be more in your local advertisements. Like, let's say you have Academy Sports or Dick's Sporting Goods, where they have a sponsored athlete they're showing. But of course, if it was a Black kid, where you see in football gear, you see a lot of Black athletes. So then, of course, kids are going to see that and then they want to be that. Mm-hmm. But for baseball, normally it is somebody who is white or just of lighter descent. But I think that just kind of day-to-day life, if you just see something different, they'll want different.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So speaking of just the minor league levels and the amateur levels and the process of getting drafted and evaluations and scouting reports, has there ever been a moment, like, I don't know if you guys actually found out or saw whatever your scouting reports were from the various organizations in the league, but were there any scouting reports or just conversations that scouts might have had with you or teachers or parents or coaches throughout your process of getting drafted, where the scouting reports seem to be more focused on your athletic ability or your natural athletic talent rather than your actual skills and baseball IQ? Yeah, so I guess that's so Brendan, you go ahead.
Something. Let's go.
It's so funny because this actually happened last season, right? So I was just trying to be too mechanical because, of course, coming out of high school, your mechanics aren't going to be perfect, right? And then I was playing shortstop at the time too, so I was focused on trying to do it all. And pitching just kind of came naturally to me because I was athletic enough to play short. So then once I got on the mound, I was just throwing. I wasn't actually pitching. So getting to pro ball, first I had to change my mindset of I can't just throw 93 right down the middle. Like, this doesn't work anymore. So I actually had to make sure my mechanics were getting correct. But I was struggling with mechanics in the middle of the season last year. And my pitching coach shows me my high school video, right? And he's like, how come you are so fluid right now? Like, yeah, I have a herky-jerky motion, but he was like, you look more comfortable and you're just moving so much just smoother in your high school video rather than right now. And he was just like, you just look stiff. And he showed me my scouting report, and he was like, "Look, this is why we drafted you, because the first thing it said was athletic," and I was like, "Okay." So like that was it, and it was just like it has a lot of potential because I was 6'3", 173. Like I was skinny as a rail, man. So that was the funniest part to me, was that it was just like he was like, "All right, then be athletic, like be this person." Yeah. So I'm just like, all right. So I got the pro ball. I know I needed to fix my mechanics, but like back then I was just throwing with just an open mind. Like I knew that, oh, all right, he's late on the fastball. I'm not about to throw him a changeup. Like that's all I knew at that point. And then he was just like, well, take the knowledge that you know from right now, and then just be athletic. And I was like, all right, cool. And then the next outing I came out, I went 3 perfect, had like 6 Ks or whatever, and I was like, all right, cool. I guess I'm gonna just be athletic. And, so yeah, that's how that goes.
So in a situation like that, yes, he's saying like, here's your scouting report, be athletic, you're a good athlete, but and we're not going to call out your coach or anything, obviously, but is there are there teachable moments in those conversations beyond just like be more athletic, here's your scouting report? Like, is there anything that?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Because every pitcher is obviously different. So, and it's basically about being yourself, because every baseball player, every athlete has to be themselves. You don't try to be other people. And that was my thing, was I was trying to watch, of course, we have our big leaguers like DeGrom, and then you see how he's doing it, and then I'm like, well, I'm tall and wiry, so maybe I could try to do that. No, that's not it.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like looking for big league comparisons, and I'm like looking at Jack Flaherty throw, and I'm like, nah, he's more mechanical. I'm not as stiff and trying to be neat with it. And then he was just like, be athletic was basically kind of just telling me to be myself, because if I try to think, and I swear this has happened in bullpens so many times where I'm trying to think of my mechanics, and like I just start spiking everything. I'm like, yo, first off, my fastball has definitely gone 60 feet before, not 58. like what is going on? And then whenever they're just like, yo, just breathe, just be you, I'm just boom, spotting up. So that was basically it, where don't try to be like anybody else. Be yourself. You know your strengths. You know your weaknesses. So, yeah, that's how that went.
Yeah. Josiah, did you see your scouting report, or did you have any of those experiences?
Honestly, I never saw my scouting report because my first 2 years in college, actually, I was a shortstop. I pitched a little bit my freshman and sophomore year. My sophomore year was kind of when I blew up. But then my junior year, when I was like a starting pitcher, I didn't really know much beyond getting outs out there. And I'm playing at a Division II school, so, there's not much conversations going on like, hey, this is what we think. This is the scouting report. But I'm sure time and time again, if you saw my 25 plus scouting reports from every club, it'd be like athletic. And I think that's more so because I was a shortstop my whole life, and that was my first full year just pitching. But I don't think it really affected me. I think it actually helped me, and I benefited from it because teams were saying, okay, this is his first year pitching, and he's already having this much success. This is what we can dream on 3-4 years down the line if he continues to make that progression while remaining athletic or whatever it may be. So I thought it helped me in regards to where I got drafted or the way teams thought about me. But then, like Brendan said, in bullpens or wherever, you'll always have the coach that says, hey, just be athletic. And I'm like, I'm trying, but I'm also like, I want to go out there and, pitch to the game plan and make sure I'm in control of my body. So like, it's kind of like finding that balance of, okay, I want to be athletic. I want to do what I've always naturally done, but I also want to be able to throw that pitch low and away or up in the zone or whatever it may be. So I think that's just something us as black pitchers, we get used to, because that's more or less the fix that we hear a lot is just be athletic. And in terms of the fix, I don't think it's also one size fits all, as you also talked about, Brandon. It's case by case. No one's ever the same pitcher. So I think with the whole athletic kind of comment, there's some benefits, but there's also a lot of um, probably generalizations about it and how it goes about being a black pitcher.
Let me read a quote to you from Joe Adell, actually. You may have seen this back in June, but he said something like this. I'll say it verbatim, actually. So it's important to know that by the time most black baseball players are being scouted professionally, many have been playing the sport for over a decade, just like white players. So why are we, quote, raw and toolsy and considered high risk? When a scout uses these terms to describe a player, more times than not, they're describing a black baseball player. So we kind of intersect with that a little bit. But I just wanted y'all to respond to that. What have you how does that make you feel, or have you seen sort of that kind of script applied in a way that may have been, if not detrimental to your careers, because y'all obviously here, but like perhaps a unfortunate sort of typecast, a stumbling block for black players.
Okay. You go first, Brendan.
I actually, whenever he said that and they posted on MLB, I actually posted it on my story because I was like, yo, that is very true. And I've seen that happen in a couple cases with guys that I grew up playing with, and they're just natural baseball players. But the whole high risk thing is that the way that they approach the game, because of course, you don't want to be all gas, no brakes, because you do need to know when to settle down. But also at the same time, if you could just teach these guys to actually see what's going on and observe the whole game before they just, let's say, try to take an extra base. But he's toolsy. He has speed. He's like, he has some type of baseball IQ to where he just knows that he can take that next step, but it also gets him crossed off because they're like, hold up. Like, he doesn't have any IQ, because why are you going on this type of play or whatever the situation is? So I have actually seen some of my friends and some of my teammates get their name crossed off from schools or whoever was scouting them because of being raw and toolsy.
That's a good point. Actually, I don't know what draft Joe Adell was in, maybe 2017 or whatever. But I remember watching those drafts because I was playing summer ball at the time, so we had some off time to watch who was getting drafted and whatnot, just to see if I knew anyone. But I remember they would always say, like, he's got this top tier talent, but we just don't know if he'll hit. And it's like he went whatever pick to the Angels, and it's like he's already in the big leagues. He just debuted this year. He would have debuted no matter what, pandemic or not. And it's like, okay, if he's debuting this early in his career, why was that high risk sort of tag put on him? But then I also watched this year's draft in 2020, and there were a couple outfielders, high school outfielders, kind of the same thing as Joe Adell, white kids, and all the analysts are saying complete player. I saw one analyst compared one of these high school kids to Cody Bellinger. I'm like, Cody Bellinger's on another level. And I'm like, I understand, they can comp the body and all sorts of things on that. But I'm like, why is he complete? But, a kid like Joe or anyone else, maybe like Hunter Green, he comes to mind first. It's like, why are they risky? But, you got a complete player right here that can be in the big leagues or like in a couple of years when, these guys are going out and getting the job done. And I just think there's definitely a sort of that high risk or the toolsy number that follows black baseball players as they continue to get up the ranks, because teams teams are probably saying, we don't have many players that look like this person, so we don't know what we're going to get, more or less, if you guys understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a quick question just to piggyback off of what you guys said. Did you ever encounter or interact with a black scout from an organization? Or were they all like white and Latino scout or white scouts? I don't know.
Actually, when the Twins came and scouted me, they had LaTroy Hawkins come out.
Oh, okay.
So it was pretty cool because I'm like, yo, I've watched this guy. I've seen what he does, and I had the same body comp as him, being tall and lanky. So then, he basically gave me some tips on how to throw my pitches and how deceptive that they can be. And just a short 10-minute conversation with him after a game that I pitched, it really helped me throughout the rest of the season. And then now I got drafted. So it was really cool to actually be able to talk to him and see somebody that I actually wanted to be like.
Yeah. When I was getting scouted, most of the area scouts, probably all the area scouts I met with or saw were all white guys. But it was good to see when like cross-checkers or special assistants or whatever they may be would come into town. And, there would be a couple black people in the crowd, and I'd be like, okay, that's great to see. Say you have a crowd of 30 scouts mixing, or 30 scouts, GMs, and whatever you have it. There'd be 4, maybe 5, which is great to see. But it's also like, man, if you think about it now, it's like we're missing the beat. I'm sure there are people just as passionate that are just as good at the job that are black that can go out and scout these kids and interact and try to relate a little bit more, which would be interesting to see. But yeah, when I was getting scouted, I didn't see too many black faces.
Do you think that matters? I mean, I know you guys kind of touched on it, and I know with LaTroy, that had an impact on you, Brendan. He was also a Major League Baseball player, so we could actually see his career and see his success with the Twins and a whole bunch of other organizations as his career went on. But is it even important really to see scouts that look like you, that can interact with you, that maybe might not be like Major League Baseball players that are transitioning to another part of their careers? So, I mean, I asked the question probably with an assumption that it does matter, because as a fan, as someone from the outside, I would think it would. But as young black men that are actually playing the game on a professional level, is that something that's even important to you, or you it's just you just want to get to the show?
I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't important to me at the time, because I was just like, you're a pro scout. You're gonna get me into the door. So I was just basically focused on getting to the show. That was it.
Yeah, I think there's like two sides of the answer. It's like you said, like, you're a pro scout, evaluate me however you want. I want to play, I want to sign and do whatever. But then there's also like, man, if this scout looked like me, maybe I could relate a little bit more. Maybe I can open up a little bit more. Maybe ask him some questions, or say down the line, be a guy you can network with just a little bit closer. Not saying you couldn't do that with the other side of the spectrum, but I think there could be sort of a networking or familiar piece that could be attributed along with seeing someone that looked like me, that was a scout, that was making these decisions.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And I would imagine, like, now I'm without question the least athletic of any in here. My baseball career ended in like 6th grade and started in 6th grade. You know what I mean? But like, though I have a nice like sandlot splitter, but we'll show y'all later. But like I remember I remember the first game I really decided I wanted to watch on a television, and that was like on my own without anyone compelling me to, and it was Doc Gooden actually, but not Doc Gooden in the '80s though. Like I'm talking about like frankly washed, busted 2000, the year 2000 Doc Gooden, who had been picked up for the Yankees on the second tour because they just had a lot of injuries that year. And they just needed a body to make a start for a doubleheader against the Mets, actually, And so there was some hype locally because it was because Subway Series is always a big deal, as I'm sure Brendan you're going to see very soon, but even bigger back then because that year they ended up actually both meeting in the World Series. And then it was also because it was the first time Doc had pitched against the Mets as a member of the Yankees. Or even period, I think, I think it was the first time in Shea Stadium in a different uniform. So he's probably going 88. He's just not the same dude, but he got the win. He got, I think it was like 2 runs over 5 in the third innings, and he kind of like grinded it out, and I loved it. I ate up every second of this guy who was, not the person my dad told me about, that he was watching, like, because I saw. And I didn't realize it in my elementary school brain at the time, but but I see it now, like, oh, it had to be because I saw a glimmer of like myself, in that man in the mound. So I could only imagine that, like, seeing like, people who, ahead of you in the game, whether again, explicitly or intuitively, has to make a difference at some point, do you have any are there any people that I guess besides of course Brandon your father but people who you saw who really like just kind of I guess were inspired you, were models and templates of like kind of what you wanted to be?
I mean, for short term, well, starting off at high school, so DeMarcus, we actually played my freshman year, he was a senior. And we played them in the playoffs. So I just see this big black dude getting on the mound. I'm talking about just racking up Ks against us. And I remember I went home and I told my mom, and my dad was traveling for business, right? So we're all just sitting there on the phone with him. And I was just going crazy. I was like, Dad, like, Pedal has this black dude, bro. He's up there throwing 90 to 93, like just blowing us away. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be like that my senior year. So that was something that I could actually see in person. Cool. And he hurt us because he knocked us out of playoffs. But it was just like it was actually somebody that I could see firsthand and kind of just work to be where he was. And then once he got drafted, that just made it even better. So like right now, I'm basically chasing him. I'm like, yo, how far you keep going, man? I'm going right there with you. Like I'm gonna be there in a couple of years. So it's actually good to see guys like that. And now I look up to, of course, we got Marcus Stroman now. R.I.P. my boy Sim. He got caught up in the trade, but it's gonna be all right. That's still my brother. But yeah, it's just like the way that he goes about it, because he's real relaxed. He has his own style. So seeing the way that he approaches the game and his routine, just seeing the behind the scenes stuff, the little bit that we do get to see at spring training, is cool. And then I'll actually watch the way that Tim Anderson approaches the game, because he's making a big splash right now. So it's just cool to see those two guys and kind of, bring that same energy to the game while also being able to get your job done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so cool. That story right there. You're seeing them, like, I wish I had a story like that. But no, like when I was growing up, I just always watched baseball. So I grew up a Yankee fan. So I'd be watching El Duque, I'd be watching Mussina, you name it, anyone. But what really like got me like stuck on pitching wasn't later on, and that was actually Marcus Stroman. I just was loving what he was doing in Toronto, and it was unique, and it was like, wow. And then also being in big league spring training this past year, you run into guys, David Price and Mookie Betts. They stick out like a sore thumb. So like being with David Price those couple weeks, it really it dawned on me that it was like, wow, I can join these great line of guys. And it's like, if you look back at his career, he debuted in, I think, 2008, and what he's gone through and what he's accomplished, it's just like, man, like you want that for yourself. And it's like, it's even more attainable now because someone that looks like you just did it. And it's like, kind of, I think growing up as a young black pitcher, there's not many role models, but the ones that are there, I think if you can like highlight those guys and be like, okay, that's who I look up to, like Stroman, Price, Chris Archer, those are guys that have done it for years and years. And those are the kind of guys that I look up to, that I'm like, man, they've done it for years. And I want to continue that sort of lineage, because once they hang up their cleats, there's going to have to be that next line that come up and, inspire that next generation and that next generation and so on.
For sure.
So jumping off that, you mentioned, Josiah, that there weren't a whole lot of role models as pitchers, in the game, as far as black pitchers anyway, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
But and the stats kind of bear that out, among those, of course, of the decline in playing, in black percentages, period. If you are black and in the league, you are most likely an outfielder or maybe a shortstop, which I guess is kind of full circle for athletic toolsy sort of like roles, right? Where you have to run a lot, things that are unfortunate, sort of limited, at times typecasts about, who we are, right? But I'm curious if you guys had any thoughts or, observations as to why there are so few black players at your position as a pitcher.
I think, I feel like it's kind of like the whole QB analogy. It's like pitching's a position of more or less IQ, or you have to think a lot, or you have to set up hitters. And it's like quarterback, you have to make decisions on a dime. And, that you see it like with Cam Newton's going through it. Lamar Jackson is going to go through it. Pat Mahomes, when he starts to decline, they're going to question everything he's doing. It's like they get the job done, but they're always like, can he make that right decision? So I think in relating it back to pitching, it's like teams sort of think, can he execute that pitch, or is he going to, not execute it, or those sorts of things. And then I think like a position like center field, teams will put you out there, say a guy, he's not doing too great at shortstop, they'll put him in center field and they'll say, go out and do it. Just do what comes naturally. So you see a guy like Billy Hamilton, when he was coming up, I know he was an infielder and he became a center fielder. It's like, I'm sure he had many conversations like, hey, go out there and run. And unfortunately, I feel like that happens to a lot of guys coming up. It's like, we don't think you can play this position, so we're going to put you there and do what you do best.
1,000%. I have nothing to say. I totally agree.
And piggybacking off of that, obviously the battery. I mean, the catcher position is just as important, and in many ways is the captain of the ship, and more so than the pitcher. And it's interesting because I'm the oldest guy here. I don't look like it, thankfully, but I'm definitely the oldest guy in this conversation. So when I think of the catcher position and black catchers, I always go back to Charles Johnson. And Charles Johnson was one of the best catchers in the game. And at the time, it was like, it wasn't that big of a deal that there was a black guy playing that position, especially because he was so successful. I mean, he was clearly like the leader of the teams that he was on. But you look at it now, there's a handful of pitchers, and I feel like that number is growing, but like I don't see any black catchers. And it seems like, the guy who has to execute the game plan along with the pitchers, that other side of the battery just isn't seen in the game. So I'm curious why you think that is, and if you personally, either one of you, have pitched to black catchers, at least on the professional level. I think I know the answer, but I feel like it's a question to ask.
No. No.
Honestly, last year, I started in low A and in double A. I played, let's say I played 12 plus teams, if not more. I only saw 2 black catchers, and at that they were like the second string guys, so they weren't getting the bulk of ABs, they weren't getting the innings, and it was like, man, like where did all the black catchers go? And I think, of course there's a shortage of black pitchers, but I think the shortage of black catchers is actually like real, and you could probably see it on paper and say these are how many catchers are in the organization, how many, and basically show their ethnicities. And I think, you would be interested to see how many there aren't.
Right.
Yeah. There were, like Randy was saying, there's Charles Johnson, and then like, Rosa Martin had, who grew up in Canada but had a, black father, and then Bruce Maxwell, which actually is an interesting opportunity as a speaking to a member of the Mets organization. Why don't you react to that? How, can you share like some of your feelings with your excitement or really anything, I guess, when you found out that Bruce had joined the team?
I mean, to be honest with you, I did not really pay attention to it. I've been laser focused on basically making sure I still do my job. So I haven't been too caught up in media, but I've seen some stuff go on, such as Billy Hamilton joined us this past week. So yeah,
right,
yeah, right. Yeah. I saw that briefly when that happened, and that was good to see, because he kind of was out of a job when that all first went down with him kneeling for the anthem. And then, obviously the Mets had a need, so they signed him. And I think that was, kind of baseball, if not society's sort of way to say, okay, we're starting to understand what his focus was when he did that. And of course, he was the only guy to do it at the time. And it's like, okay, he shouldn't, if he's still able to perform at the level we know he can perform at, then, why is he out of a job? So I think it's sort of it's adapting with the culture of society right now with seeing him get signed.
Yeah.
Josiah, I have a question for you. Sorry, this just popped in my head as you were talking about Maxwell. Since you're at the alternate site, I'm curious to know what conversations or interactions you had with fellow teammates around opening day, when on the major league level there was, the protests with the black flag, the kneeling before the anthem, all those things. But we don't really know what happened at any of the alternate sites, and we won't know what would happen if the minor league season was going on. But I'm curious to know what your experiences were during the time that alternate sites were going on around opening day. Were there conversations? Did people ignore it? Like, was it something that was brought up in the locker room amongst the guys? Or
actually, the day before, or 2 days before opening day, I was still in summer camp. So,
okay.
I didn't know what was going on at the alternate site, but I was there for the conversation when we had our team representative talk about what was going to happen with the black flag and the patches and the shirts and whatnot. And, being on the Dodgers, they're the organization that everyone basically looks up to in terms of inclusiveness in the sport. And seeing, that response in that room, it was really uplifting to see that people were on board with this. And, of course, I'm sure guys silently were against it or whatever they have it, but there was a sort of unity in what we were doing, and of course, there was an open forum for if you wanted to kneel or stand for the anthem. That was your own on your own Discord. But I think the organization as a whole, for us, we did a great job with having the black flag and representing the patches and wearing the shirts and just showing that if there's an organization that's going to keep this at the forefront, it's going to be us.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess what last question, and if we have time, maybe we can even open the floor to others who may be watching. As I'm told, there's actually a comment box that we can receive submissions from, but right now, of course, with the pandemic, that's a shortened draft, no season for most baseball players in this country. I'm curious if how you guys, as minor leaguers, not major leaguers, might have, if you have any insights or thoughts as to what the loss of a minor league season or a shortened draft might have on, black amateur or minor league talent. I mean that specifically even in ways that may be different than how, white American baseball players are going through this.
Yeah.
For me, I honestly don't have an answer for you because we have a fair share of black minor leaguers in our organization, and with the shortened draft means, and how they started cutting organizations, well, affiliates in each organization. Mm-hmm. So, but none of our black players got cut, and we're still grinding. I think the loss of a season, of course, proving yourself, because I myself made a drastic jump from where I was last year to this year. And the day I throw a live BP and I'm getting all this positive feedback, and I'm talking about even from our field coordinator, Top Dog, he was like, everybody was loving it, and I'm just like, man, this year I'm about to they're gonna see me. I'm gonna get out there and then make the prospect list. Like that was my main projective going into this season, was get on the prospect list. I mean, it's like, yeah, I get a lot of attention. They make sure that I'm all right, and it's like, yeah, I feel like a priority, but I also want to have my name set. Like, here's top 30. Whenever you see the top 30 list, you see Brendan Hardy on there. So that was my goal. And I was just getting so much positive feedback. And then, boom, season was shut down. I was like, man, like this was going to be me. but now I'm just grinding and then just preparing to make an even bigger splash next year. So,
yeah. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just asking, how do you, with the shortened draft, 5 rounds from 40, right? With the, the loss of a season and really, I mean, with coronavirus, the way things are set up, like, who knows when we'll be able to have baseball as usual again, sports as usual. Like, how do you think the pandemic and all of the consequences from it may influence, black athletes and, the pipeline of black athletes, at least as long as this is happening?
I think from the draft standpoint, with it being shortened and then, free agents have to take, I think, $20K or do whatever or say no. I think it definitely limits the amount of like black kids that are going to probably enter pro ball this past year, because, there's not, there in 40 rounds, anything can happen. Say you're a late round guy, that's an opportunity. But with 5 rounds, you're like, man, I don't know how I'm going to shake that because things can, they're going to want to sign the high school kid over slot or whatever it may be. And then with the free agent signing, say you get 5 offers for $20K, that's great money. I'm not saying it's not, but I think, if it was a regular year, say a high school kid that was sort of torn between going to the draft or going to a 4-year school, he'd kind of be like, man, I don't know if I want to take that. But so then his development might not be what he was looking for at that 4-year school. So then it might sidetrack him, and then he might not get drafted 3 years later down the line. So it's like the pandemic, obviously, I think hurt a lot of black kids going into that wanted to potentially go into pro ball. And then also with like our seasons, it's not really up to us at this point. It's just like whenever they say come out and do what you got to do, we kind of have to do that at this point as minor leaguers, as you said.
So there was one question or a couple questions out on Twitter and YouTube when it comes to something that's been a major topic of conversation, not just for black minor leaguers, but minor league players across the board. The issue of minor league payments and the lack thereof, and how that's become such a big issue in the forefront. How do you guys feel about that conversation, about that topic? How there seems to be more advocates publicly for minor leaguers to be compensated in a much more appropriate manner, according to their talent levels and the amount of work that you guys put into your craft. And so that's the first question. And also second, Josiah, along that vein, can you talk a little bit about David Price's decision to help support the minor leaguers in the organization with their pay and lack of pay with everything that's going on with the pandemic?
Yeah. I think, are you talking about like the stipend and all that stuff with the first question?
And just the stipend, just overall, just the lack of appropriate pay for minor leaguers across the game.
Yeah. I think it's we're starting to see that teams and baseball are saying, hey, these guys aren't seasonal employees, because I think we're classified as seasonal employees, and teams are starting to see that if you invest in your guys, that you're going to get more bang for your buck and you're going to develop them. And then, when they make the big leagues, then you'll have a lot more years of control over them. So I think at least with the Dodgers, they do a great job in taking care of our minor leaguers. Although it might not be, as financial, our paychecks aren't the largest, but I think all the off the field stuff they do and the way they take care of us in terms of housing and food and whatever the stuff that's not really highlighted, they do a great job with that. So as pay continues to increase, I think they'll continue to see that, continue to invest in your guys, and they'll perform for you and you'll get your investments back tenfold. And then speaking on David Price, extending that gift to all of us minor leaguers, that was something that came out of nowhere. That wasn't asked for, wasn't expected. And there's 200 plus minor leaguers in our system, and for him to go out and say, hey, like, we know all you guys are going through a tough time. Hopefully this helps for a little bit. I'm sure some guys, were like, man, this isn't anything. And, there were a lot of guys that were really thankful for it. And I know me personally, I was like really thankful because he didn't have to do that. There was certainly other things he could have put that $200,000 towards, but, he wanted to donate it to minor leaguers that he particularly didn't even know. He had been in spring training with us for a month, and here he is shelling out this much money to this guy. So that kind of shows what kind of person he is, and that he's looking out for the next generation of ball players.
Brendan, do you have any thoughts on it?
No. I can only speak on the stipend and
right.
But yeah, like he said, the Dodgers did a great job of. I mean, of course, the pay isn't always exactly what you expect, but also at the same time, they've been checking up on us every 2 days, making sure everybody's healthy, and any injuries that you might have, they're making sure that you take care of that. Go to the doctor, go to a therapist. They're literally doing the best, like from what I've seen. So I have no complaints on that.
Yeah.
And just to jump off what you were saying, Josiah, about I guess what make how the organization does in your experience really take care of its minor league talent in ways that may not be like as seen. Like maybe if you can elaborate on some of those areas for people who who aren't unfamiliar with that.
Yeah. Excuse me. They're more or less when say in spring training, when it was going, they would put the minor leaguers in the hotel, and I'm not sure if many other organizations would do that. So we weren't going out of pocket for that. They were feeding us 3 meals a day, 2 at the ballpark, and then 1 at the hotel dinner. And I'm not sure many other clubs are doing that. And, they were really just lessening the costs on us because, in spring training, we're not making any money. But, if you think about it, the things you're normally going to spend money on are housing and food. And so those costs were 0. So that really makes it a lot easier for guys because, you're not going out of pocket for anything. You're there for 2 months to get better, to prepare for your season. And whether you make it or not, whether you get released or you make it to the big leagues, that kind of sets a standard for the organization because they know that if they're taking these big costs off your plate and you don't have to think about them, you can eventually become more productive on the field. And I think that's sort of their outlook on everything they invest in with us minor leaguers.
Oh yeah, guys. And can I say something real quick? I made a previous reservation, so I'm sorry, but I had to get off. It was great.
Yeah.
I appreciate y'all having me. Man. It was great talking to y'all, and I'll make sure I follow y'all on Instagram. Got to network somehow. But thank you again for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, and good luck, Brendan.
Nice.
Yeah, so we should wrap it up on that note. We've taken up a good amount of your time, Josiah, so we appreciate it. We're wishing the best for you for this season. I hope you get called up. I hope you get that call. And then we can see you in Dodger Blue so you can be alongside Mookie Betts and Bellinger, and you can pitch to Austin Barnes and all those guys. So especially as a fellow New Yorker, I'm definitely rooting for you hard. And best of luck to you this year and the rest of your career.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, man. It was a pleasure. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. I learned a lot, and so that's I love this game, and I love just seeing us shine in it. So so same here. Also, as a New Yorker, just so everyone's clear, I'm from Queens, but I'm very excited to see someone from my neck of the woods represent, and we're in for you.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, all right,
and thank you to the pitchers list for having us, giving us the opportunity to speak to Josiah and Brendan and Bradford. It was an honor to share this moment with you, and thank you to everybody involved.
All right.